Now get in there! That's what I pay you for!
You mention the name Brian Clough to anybody now, they smile and they talk about things that he said or did, you know, and that has to be true to him. That has to be in the film, and more of that has to be in the film. So I think the film, I hope, does far more justice to him as a man than maybe the book did.
I was on the floor when I got sacked at Leeds. I was out of work and I was a so-called failure, despite the financial settlement I got, which made me secure financially for the first time in my life.
That payoff gave Clough time to enjoy his family and his life's other love.
My favourite sport's cricket. I love cricket. I've always loved cricket. I would love to have been an opening bat. You know, to have been out there. You don't have to rely on anybody, or certainly not too many people. And that's the thing that appeals to me, you know.
Come up to see me, make me smile.
After 4 months out of the game, Clough was back, and perhaps with a sense of déjà vu, as he took charge of second division strugglers Nottingham Forest.
Do you feel at all apprehensive?
Oh no, not at all. I feel, you know, I'm in good nick physically and I'm in good nick mentally.
What is your mental attitude after that break?
It's fine. It's had time to, you know, recover from the episode at Leeds, and I've taken stock of things and I've had a good rest and I've enjoyed being out of the game.
We had a real furious Brian Clough. We had a man who was, you know, desperate to go and prove himself one of the great managers of all time.
I felt like a square peg in a round hole at Leeds, so I would have actually walked down the motorway to sign for him, but I drove down instead, signed for Nottingham Forest. I actually took a drop in wages, which my good lady Anne said, don't you take a drop in wages. But when he put the contract in front of me, he said, that's all you're getting, and I just signed it.
Taylor stayed at Brighton, and then eventually he was persuaded to come and join me here, and then
But
everything...
why?
Why was he persuaded?
Why did you persuade him?
Oh, I think two people can do a job better than one for a start, and his expertise in finding players and having a knowledge of football was second to none at that particular time.
There was just a little spark missing from the things that he was doing, and it was really when Peter Taylor rejoined him at Forest that maybe that little spark returned, and then he was absolutely superb.
Clough and Taylor reunited, worked their own brand of alchemy on Nottingham Forest-based metal, and again produced gold.
We were a group of players, in many aspects, just trying to find our feet. But we'd had a few bad experiences, you know, with the manager before, John, and I particularly couldn't get on with him no matter what we did. But when Brian Clough arrived in '75, changed our lives, changed our whole outlook in football.
If he hadn't come along at that stage, I think I would have gone out of the game, because my career wasn't going very well, and like, as I say, a lot of people have blamed everything else other than myself. And it was when he came in the door, basically told me what he thought was wrong with me. I didn't live right, I was slovenly, I was too heavy. But he thought I had talent, and that if I applied myself properly, he thought he could do it.
Robertson. Good running by Bowyer, number 8.
Clough did realise that this boy had great talent, and so did Peter Taylor. And suddenly the whole outfield play went through John, and rightly so too, because he was mesmeric.
And I can remember talking to the players there, and they said, well, what do you mean we're going to be successful? And I said, well, it's not a case of if we're going to be successful, it's just a case of when. And they looked at me and said, well, how do you know that? And I said, Peter Taylor and Brian Clough. I said, no betting. We'll be successful.
The dynamic duo did bring success. A third-place finish saw the Midlanders promoted to the First Division for the 77-78 season.
Alongside you here is Peter Taylor. What's so special about him? Where does he fit into the team?
Oh, it would take me all night, Frank, to tell you what's special about him. We've got several things in common, but the main thing we've got in common is we want the same things.
Fine, we do let him speak from time to time. I'll put a question to him. Do you find it difficult, Peter, to get a word in edgeways? He's quite a good talker, isn't he, this boy?
Yeah, in public, yes, but...
Peter was an exceptionally funny man. He was, he made Brian Clough laugh.
Peter was usually the one with the one-liners, such as if you'd go and see him and Brian for a rise, you know, he'd say, well, we'll get your shoes soled and healed and that's a rise.
Brian, he used to come and knock on the door at Middlesbrough, and he used to say, is Pete in? And I said, yes, come on in, Brian. And he'd come in and they'd be talking football all night.
From their playing days together at Middlesbrough, their special relationship saw them manage together for the best part of 2 decades.
Perhaps you could say that I was the shop window and he was the brains. He certainly runs the place on a lot of occasions.
Peter Taylor was the more outgoing guy. He was the one who knocked Clough into shape a bit. And when Clough got his injury and was out of the game, Peter propped him up and said, come on, you're going to be all right, we're going to manage a football club, we'll do it together. By the end of it, Clough was the one who knew exactly what he wanted to do, and Peter Taylor followed in his slipstream, because he wasn't the sort of guy who wanted to be on telly necessarily, Peter.
It was a marvellous partnership, and Clough always gave him the highest credit for his ability to find players.
And then he'd kind of deliver them to Brian Clough, who'd knock them into shape, the way he did.
Brian and Peter together, the good cop, bad cop act, at times got very, very comical.
I personally felt that during my time there, they were both bad cops, but...
Good support in the centre. O'Neill! Yes! Martin O'Neill has scored!
I went to see him in his office a number of times and I was absolutely petrified. I felt that I had done my stint at wide right-hand side. Well, I wanted to go and play central midfield. And in those days, of course, there were numbers 1 to 11 and number 12, just being the one sub. And he said, I'll give you a choice. What number did you wear last week? Number 7, boss. He said, right, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. I said, I'll give you a choice. Number 7 or number 12. So I never bothered him again, you know.
How do you react, though, when someone, you know, from your playing staff comes in and says, boss, I think you're doing this wrongly?
Good, well, I ask him which way he thinks it should be done. We get down to it, and then we talk about it for 20 minutes, and then we decide I was right.
They were a perfect blend. They were absolutely ideal, because when Clough used to knock you down, people would be there just picking you up.
A statue of Clough stands in Nottingham town centre, and now the two families have successfully campaigned for one of Brian and Peter to be erected outside Pride Park in Derby.
I remember going to a reserve match with them. I remember Peter, you know, hold it, push it, turn it.
Hold it, hold it!
He always came out with a quip to make Brian laugh.
Yes, they did.
And that was good, because you needed, I think that was part of the partnership.
Yeah.
You needed that.
Yeah.
There was something magical about the two of them at their very, very best.
Nottingham's Pied Pipers had not only created an entertaining brand of football that drew crowds, but it also amassed points.
From Burton Joyce, Nottingham, dear Mr Saville, I and 4 of my friends from the Nottingham High School would love to meet the Nottingham Forest football team. Perhaps they would sing their song on your programme, and then we could meet them as well.
Chances are that sitting at the side of the pitch here, that you and Peter Taylor might start humming it during a match?
I wouldn't think so, no. There's rather a different sound comes out of Peter Taylor's and my mouths during football matches.
After I'd written that song, I've... only joking. We came into the charts at number 14 because I'd bought 4,000 copies, and unfortunately I think we went straight back out again.
We haven't got the world in our hands yet, despite the fact we played reasonably well for 5 or 6, 7 months. At this precise moment, we haven't won anything.
Gemmell to Woodcock, again a run in on the keeper, and this time number 4. Manchester United buried in their own backyard by a team that has the hallmark of its creator, Brian Clough.
Every single game was something to savour. We looked forward to the game so much that it was an extraordinary feeling.
Forest weren't just about firepower. Clough and Taylor had added steel in defence in the shape of Kenny Burns and Britain's then most expensive custodian, Peter Shilton.
And that's what they paid £300,000 for.
Peter used to inevitably get a lot of headlines, and it used to get on Burnsy's nerves, and rightly so as well. And Burnsy used to say, I'm bloody sick of reading about him. He said he's never had a shot to save for a month, and over periods of time he didn't have shots to save, but when he had one he saved it, you see. That's what made him the best.
I said before we kicked the ball, I thought we'd qualify for Europe, no more, and that would have been an achievement. But having signed Shilton, I said then that anything was possible.
I remember going to Coventry and we needed a point that night to clinch the championship.
This is Wallace, Ferguson, oh, and Shilton says, I've almost won the championship.
Just a season after promotion, Forest secured the League Cup, deposed Liverpool as champions and saw their manager become only the second after Herbert Chapman to win the title with 2 clubs.
We go out to entertain the public, we go out to pack football grounds, we try to entertain, and you never know, John, you and your profession just might recognise that we are a good side.
They played at Nottingham Forest, in my opinion, what I call carpet football. Football on the ground, on the deck, in defeat, and good retention of the ball and looking for the through ball on the deck, in the spaces between the centre-halves and the full-backs, you know.
2 against 2, Gemmell's arrived all the way from the back, and With hasn't seen him, he has now.
We just get on with how I feel the game should be played. We don't play in the clouds. If God wanted us to play football in the clouds, he'd have put grass there. And the other thing, of course, the discipline of the players on the pitch was, I think, was remarkable. No red cards at Nottingham Forest, you know. Very few yellow cards. He wouldn't allow that.
I recommended 30-odd years ago that when a player was repeatedly getting booked, for example, and in trouble, not only discipline him, but discipline the manager as well. You go and find Alex Ferguson 50,000 quid, and knowing how tight Alex is with money, I'm telling you, nobody would get booked in Manchester United's side, because he'd step on it straight away.
Forest's championship victory meant a place in the European Cup, Clough's holy grail. Clough had been there 5 years earlier with Derby, but had endured a bitter experience in a semi-final in Turin.
The match over in Juventus, where we lost 3-1, was the only football game I've ever played in where I nearly ended up in tears, knowing that we'd been cheated in front of UEFA officials, the television cameras, a packed crowd.
Free kick against Derby. That's the 38th free kick given against Derby. Juventus have had 8.
We weren't hurt so much losing it, because all footballers get hurt losing it, but we know we'd been cheated.